What are we drinking today?
Well, this is actually 18-month-old Something's Alright, but I recently tapped it. We have one keg left, and I recently tapped it and discovered that it was actually better now than when I released it. So, sorry,
Maturation.
I drank it. Yeah, it's better now.
Yep. Joel Nash from Innate Brewers. We're down here today at the Spearwood production facility for Innate. Thanks for taking the time out, Joel.
Thanks for coming.
So I guess a good place to start as any. Your journey to kind of get here is pretty circuitous in a way. You've gone up to Indian Ocean Brewing at Mindarie, down to Gage Roads. You started at Colonial. What else is in the repertoire?
Is that it? Gage Roads, Colonial, Indian Ocean. Yeah, I've sort of, I guess when I first got a job in the industry, it was with Colonial when I was like 19, and I was pretty green and probably didn't deserve it at that point. But my good friend Mal, who has brewed all over the shop in WA, gave me a job at Colonial basically. So he taught me how to brew, and I guess I was a bit green at that point, so I went travelling, and I've been in and out of the industry, you know, from hospitality and back and forth and travelling since then for probably 10 years. But that initial job was the one where I sort of learnt and got inspired to actually want to keep doing it, and then I've always just found myself back in it because I guess it's the only thing I'm really seem to be able to be good at or hired in, you know. So,
yeah. I know. So your kind of general hospo experience has been beyond WA. Did you travel a bit for work?
I lived in Copenhagen for a few years. Mainly, I mean, I did work in hospo there as well. It's back and forth. I've always been interested in food and beer and wine and business, like of that variety. So that's kind of why I've always drifted between those things. But whenever I work in hospo, I get sick of not being able to actually create anything. So
Copenhagen's not a bad place to at least by osmosis pick up a bit of food, drink, beer, wine experience, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because I left Colonial, I think when I was 21. I just turned 21, and went to Copenhagen, and the beer culture there was like Mikkeller. I don't know if you know Mikkeller, and Nøgne Ø and I haven't spoken Danish for too long. Hand Bryggeriet, as we call it. And yeah, that was pretty awesome because I didn't have any friends, but I used to go to the small bars after work and just sort of sit there with the old guys and drink things like Mikkeller off tap and, you know, that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was also pretty inspirational. Yeah,
cool. So you joined the Innate team in 2015, early 16?
Was it last February or something like that? Yep. Yeah, maybe just over a year now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. So it's obviously getting a brewery off the ground is one of the things that people are really fascinated in, whether they're looking to get a brewery off the ground themselves or they've had friends who have done it. So what kind of was there any trepidation coming back here and launching into a project like this with the co-owners of Innate?
Not really. I mean, I like that sort of thing. That's what I like to do. But I guess these the owners have been on sort of a journey of first coming up with the idea of doing this, and then actually doing it, and then realizing potentially everything that we need to learn, and that's what I've sort of been a part of, and I think that we've come quite a long way pretty quickly. A lot because the owners are all pretty go-getter type people, and we're sort of pushing things through quicker than normal, I think. It's been about a year, and we've sort of increased our production. I mean, we've increased our sales by 100% in a year. And we're now doing a lot of background work on our identity, and we've got plans for the facility, and we're starting to try and work out where we sit in the industry. I think originally it was just a sort of passion and some friends coming together, but it's kind of growing growing now. Beyond that.
Yep. So there's a few demands placed on you as you kind of head into Easter 2017. So what does it look like, Innate, for the year ahead? What kind of hurdles have you got, like both from the brew house wise and business side?
Well, I think at the moment what we're doing is really trying to map out where we want to be, where we want to position ourselves in the industry. Originally, again, it was just a passion, but now we're trying to look into where we actually want to sit and what part we want to play in everything. Because I think, and because of the work we've been doing in the background, I think we're starting to see that there's potentially a lot of same in the industry a little bit with the identities and the target market. You know, a lot of that sort of coast. You know, the coastal sort of, where, you know, parochial, you know, surfer, skater type vibe going on, and we're exploring a little bit about what else there is. You know, because there's a lot more, I think, than that.
You're kind of straddling that line of having CBD access and having Frio, which is you know, hella busy place, and then you've got the south, which is, like you say, the parochial surfer. Anywhere south of Mandurah is getting the boat out, so it's you've got access to both of those sides of the culture that surrounds brewing.
We do, like you said, you know, the petition beer drinkers. But also, I think if you look at all the breweries that came through from probably 10 years ago, like successful breweries around the country, I believe that there's a little bit of a theme developing with their angles, and I see it as a little bit, you know, coastal, cool, hipster, and I reckon there's more to the industry than that. And so that's what we're kind of discussing in the background, but also the facility itself. So upgrading this, because it was just to put, you know, as one of the owners says, Franken brew house, and we're now turning into a facility that can deliver on what we want to achieve, you know, consistency and quality and all that sort of stuff. So it's going to be that going for the next 6 to 12 months, but there'll be a lot of things happening on the way with beer. We've got a lot of hopefully good beers coming out.
So you talk about finding your place in the industry, but how does that translate to beer styles? Even in the tanks now, you've got kind of not the most regular of selections coming through the tanks. So what's the approach there?
Look, it's not fully developed yet, but I mean my thing, as far as I can define it, I don't really have a very strong feeling of it, but is simply to, when I choose to do something, make something, I want to do it justice. So in the tanks, like you just said, in the tanks we've got a Belgian blonde, we've got a double IPA, we've got a hoppy Munich lager, and we've got an IPA. And every time I write those recipes, and we've actually got the freedom to do this, that's a good thing, is that the owners are empowering me and the brewery to do the best we can each time. You know, so like when I look at the IPA, for example, it's simply how can I make the best IPA I can, and obviously that's an ongoing thing to try and better it, and we've got to have a better facility. But that's pretty much my thing. If we're going to make a Belgian blonde, let's get a good yeast, let's use good ingredients, let's try as much as we can and follow the right process, and treat it with a bit of love. Yeah, that's kind of where it begins and ends at the moment.
Yep. It's obvious something's working there, because there's a following, you know, attached to you guys, which is a credit to kind of Innate. Well, I guess
there is. I just, yeah, it's actually building more than I kind of realised, I guess. But I think there's just a bit of love in the beer, and we're the little guy a little bit as well. We're kind of challenger to a lot of it, and we want to continue to do that and not compromise and become, you know, concerned about just the dollars. I think that's what we have as an advantage. All of our owners still have their jobs, and we want to actually make good beer first, and I reckon we're going to do it once we get the facility right and everything.
Okay. So developing a core range, getting a seasonal schedule, is that part of the kind of stuff that you're working through at the moment? Just some of those questions around what is going to be part of the Innate beer selection?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So we're looking at what space we want to occupy. You know, core range, we're kind of looking at being more of a seasonal brewery that does a lot of single batch stuff. Okay. We feel like that could be a strength of ours because we're small, we don't package, so we can potentially offer something new and fresh and delicious every month, for example. So yeah, we're looking at that. You probably will see that hoppy lager come out as perhaps one of our cores in the coming months, and then we want to surround it with a whole bunch of seasonals and a whole bunch of reoccurring kind of the double IPA that we made, Watch This Space. We want to start to release that maybe 2 to 3, 4 times a year, and we want to build on that and add to that. So perhaps like a Russian Imperial Stout or whatever that we release maybe once a year. Or so we're going to try and build like a calendar of beers that people can follow, and it's based around seasonality and single batch stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and that just comes from the freedom of being the smaller guys. You can kind of play around with that, right?
Not packaging. Yeah. So most breweries have a package line which they have to then service, or they have a tap house which they have to service, because if you got a tap house, you kind of got to have a lager, a session ale, a pale ale. We don't have either of those two things at the moment. So what that allows us to do is to actually say, well, we're not filling cans, we're not servicing a bar. Let's just make seasonal beers for the season, done well, that people want, that bars want, but also the customers want. Yeah.
Some of the beers that you've put out through some Fremantle outlets, including Sail and Anchor, which is in of itself a pretty amazing pub to kind of get into, and it's had a storied history, Matilda Bay onwards. So how did that? I was wondering how that worked out and how and is it continuing?
Yeah, I mean, it actually came about just purely from a relationship, I guess, from Ant, who's one of the owners, drinking there and talking to the owners. So it's not like a backroom deal. It's just simply regulars to the pub. Ant is. I go there often now, and they've been really supportive of us, and we've endeavoured to give them good stuff when we have it, and we've built a kind of relationship like that seems to be working. So that's all that is, and it's been great because obviously, they've really helped us forge a path over the last year.
It's a breaking the mold thing, and I guess it's probably always a template for both brewers and co-owners and anyone involved in a brewery operation, where you see other breweries doing the same kind of thing that you would like to, or just taking elements from those breweries, especially with your kind of experience overseas. Joel, who have you looked to in the past and who you're looking to now?
I think it's hard to nail it into any one package, but I can look at individual elements of things that I like when people do things well. When I was in Copenhagen, I loved Mikkeller. I think it's pretty awesome that he was a gypsy brewer who created such a following. And you don't create a following just out of good beer. It's out of the whole brand. It was just awesome. Yeah. Feral have done that here, and in 10 years ago they had pretty hodgepodge branding. They were making some decent beers. They've managed to keep that running and develop it and create a following. There's just so much. I mean, I've just been to the US recently. I was in Washington and New York and Brooklyn, and again there was a lot of breweries there that were doing amazing things with beer that I took inspiration from. There was a lot of table beers, which is an interesting concept. I mean, that's obviously like a Belgian origin, but they were doing them in their own way, as they tend to do. Which were kind of like light, sessionable sometimes Brettanomyces ales. That inspired me in that way. But there's a whole bunch of stuff. I just pull. When you look at someone that succeeds, or a brewery that succeeds, or a beer that's popular, you got to just take that and go, why? You know.
Yeah. Like getting over to the US is different to kind of exploring what comes over here from the US. So that's a pretty awesome experience in itself to get exposure directly from some of the Washington State breweries, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting beer wise. I mean, I just went into every venue and basically was just blown away by every single beer.
Yep.
And it just made me realize that the consistency and the quality of all of their offering, breweries you never heard of, you know, like in Brooklyn there's a brewery called Greenpoint that I went to.
Right.
I don't know if anyone knows it, but I didn't. And it was just good, like really good, you know, like New England IPAs. There was probably 5 IPAs on the list. They were all different. They were all amazing and fresh. And there was a table beer, which was like a Bretty mid-strength. It was just quality, and it was just a tiny little brewery on the corner in Brooklyn, you know. And I think we're getting there, but like when I first started, probably 10 years ago, there was a lot of inconsistent beers, and quality was up and down. And I think now with people like Feral and Nail and Mash, etc., Colonial, they're starting to get like more of a base of quality.
Yeah. Yep. And it's another thing that's translating into styles as well is I guess there's some parochialism about what beer styles are getting the most favour in the southwest and up here in Perth. Hop forward kind of IPAs have been the name of the day. And so what's your comment on that?
I have 2 different sides to me on that. One is very much business minded, which is do it, so make beers that people want. And I do, and we do, and I enjoy all those beers too. I enjoy Gosa, the beers that are trending, right? Gosa, cloudy IPAs, West Coast IPAs, hoppy lagers, sours, etc. I love all those beers, but the other side, which is probably from Mal, my old head brewer, is a little more skeptical about it all, because I think there should be a more inclusive approach, and I think it's something that's going to come in WA once we become a little bit more not educated, just the culture grows. Sure. You know, that it doesn't matter if it's a Hefeweiss or something unpopular like that, you know, or a dark lager. It can still be a great beer, and it's just as worthy of hype as a double IPA. You know, I drink beers like that all the time that are just solid, good beers, but you know, really yummy, but they're not within the mold of the trend.
That's not a bad. It's not a bad angle for kind of innate to work. You're obviously thinking outside the mold and thinking outside the box on some of that exact stuff that you just mentioned.
I think bringing some of that stuff I think if you're going to bring it to like Perth beer snobs or the mainstream, you have to look at ways to do it to be a little more interesting. So, you know, Mal used to brew a lot of traditional stuff when I worked with him, you know, Kolsch's and alt beers and stuff. And I reckon if you can bring something to it that people get a little bit excited about, you can actually bring these styles to people. You know, I was thinking the other day, there's a new hop called Laurel, and it's quite interesting. It's like a noble hop, but on steroids. So it's got like dark fruits and herbal. And I was thinking that to do a single hop IPA with that, you know, and really heavily go at it, and people would then be able to try that hop, even though it's a noble hop, which is not what people are into. So just trying to find ways to do that, I think, is what I would like to do.
So what's in your beer fridge at the moment, Joel? When you go home on Friday night, I usually kind of start my interviews with that question. So
this question, I don't have the normal answer for you. Okay, there's no beer in my fridge. The reason being is I have two different drinking patterns. One is when I'm analysing beer or enjoying something, you know, in a bottle. The other is knocking off work beers. So I drink probably more wine at home than I do beer, but also I drink things like 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 Jaeger Pilsner and Pilsner Kell and just Pilsners, and occasionally I always try things from Celebrations, like I'll buy an IPA or go and ask Ale from Celebrations Hammy Hill to give me a taste of what's on his taps. Yeah. But I sometimes have Anderson Ghoster in there, but at the moment nothing, because I drank it last night. What was it?
Good stock rotation though.
It was probably Jaeger Pils or something obnoxious and bitter. Yeah. Much like myself.
It probably name checking time as well. I wanted to get a handle on who you've got on your Instagram feed that you see come up all the time. Brewery wise, you've dropped a few already, Mikkeller, but is there anyone else that you're following just out of personal interest or gratification in the industry?
Think about that. Well, I follow all the guys that I need to follow to see how things should be done. Yep. So I follow Feral, I follow Pirate Life, Modus, Boatrocker, those type of people. But also there's a new one in Queensland, Ballistic Beer Co. Or right. Is it Ballistic Brewing Co or Ballistic Beer Co?
North side of Brizzy.
It's in Salisbury.
Salisbury.
I believe so.
Okay.
I haven't been there, but one of my good friends is the head brewer there, and that's opening up. I think they got their launch tomorrow. That's going to be really, really cool. They've done a really awesome job.
Well, look, Joel, you've got heaps on today. I appreciate the time taken out from filtering and kegging to chat, and we're keen to follow your updates as we head across the country. So thank you very much, man. Cheers.